Welcome to the Be Battle Ready podcast, where we take a deep dive into what it takes to be battle ready in your lifestyle so that you can go to war on your life and the marketplace and win.
All right, welcome to the Be Battle Ready podcast. Today I have on Mike Maynard of Napier. He's the director and CEO of the Napier Group, a marketing agency for business-to-business technology companies. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. We were just kind of getting into the name because when you're becoming battle ready and thinking about your business and where you're going, you know, naming your company, your movement, your message has to do with that. So, and you see there's a pretty interesting story behind the actual name of the company.
Yeah, there's a pretty good story. So the company was initially formed by two people who actually were having an affair at the time. And they thought, you know, how can we spend more time together? Clearly start a marketing agency is the best way to do that. No one will ever suspect. So the primary goal was,
right?
yeah. So the primary goal was to actually have some time together. And as it turned out, one of them had a flat in a road called Napier Mews in London. And so when it came to deciding the company name, they just decided that Napier Mews London was an awesome address. So that's how the name came about.
Nice. It was also probably some code.
Yeah, I would say they both got married to each other in the end, and you know it all worked out all okay in the end. But yeah, a little bit of scandal right at the start of the company's business. It's before I was involved, though.
Yeah, it's all right. It's an interesting story. Awesome. So, tell me a little bit about what Napier does, and for all you Americans, don't call it Napier. It is Napier, and you said it's Scottish, right?
Originally, it's a Scottish name, yeah.
Awesome. So tell me a little about the company. You guys are a marketing agency for technology companies focusing on business.
Yeah, absolutely. So we help basically companies go and market to engineers. So that could be electronics engineers, mechanical engineers, software developers. But what we're really good at is marketing technical products, particularly in Europe, to technical audiences. And actually, probably won't come as a surprise, but the majority of our clients tend to be from the US. So we've got some European clients, some of our bigger clients are European as well. But we also have a lot of American clients who are looking to grow their business in Europe as well as be successful in the US.
Awesome. And, it says on your, part of your bio is that you're into technology. So what's your favorite technology at the moment?
I started out as an engineer. At one point I was designing mixing desks, did a little bit of roadie work as well, so a little bit of lighting for bands. But yeah, today I'm a marketing guy who's a bit of a tech geek. In terms of my favorite gadget at the moment, I've just signed up with Peloton. I don't have one of the Peloton bikes. I have an ordinary spinning bike. But I'm kind of in love with the app at the moment and how well it works. So I'd have to say, favorite bit of technology, this week is definitely my iPad running the Peloton app.
Nice. Yeah. My background's in fitness and all that. So it's interesting seeing all this technology come out of, Peloton coming out with their treadmill as well. And, the interactive, and how people are really getting into, being at their house, but in a class and all that. And then have you actually seen the wall mounted workout system? It's actually a mirror. No. It mounts on your wall and it has the pulley system. And it's not actual. I don't know if it's mechanical or if it's somehow they're doing it, but you actually get workouts, you get a trainer, you get all that stuff that's built into literally just mounted to your wall and you do your workouts. It's just pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think, one of the things Peloton has done, which is really good, is they understand the difference between, Europeans and Americans, and we're perhaps a little less brash and outgoing, as some of you guys are. So they actually have European instructors as well as American instructors. So Yeah, there's a guy Sam Yo. He's English guy. He's doing live classes at the right time zone for us. It all works really well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're a fan of Gary Vee. I found Gary Vee back in like 2009, 2010, and one of the things one of his like principles is that this new age of business, every company is a content creator. So Peloton has killed it in the content and doing that. It's pretty amazing. So
totally, I agree.
So how did you get from engineering into actually becoming a marketing guy?
Yeah, that's an interesting.
It's like two different sides of the
transition.
brain.
Perhaps the most honest answer is I wasn't a great engineer. I had a couple of engineering jobs and kind of enjoyed them, but I realized that actually I enjoyed talking about the technology more than I enjoyed designing with it. I moved into a role which was basically a technical support role for semiconductors. Was able to talk about the products, help engineers design, but without having to do the real hard grind of design and development, which to be honest, I mean, engineers are amazing. It's tough work. So I was doing technical support, and then after being European apps manager and running a team, I kind of thought, well, where do I go now? I could move to the States, or if I want to stay here, it's either sales or marketing is kind of the route. And so I picked marketing, basically worked for 5 years as a European marketing manager for a semiconductor company. And then the agency I was using, someone came from it and said, look, the founders are looking to sell. Are you interested in buying? And rather recklessly, I thought, well, how hard can it be to run an agency? It's quite hard. I mean, that's the answer. It really is quite hard, but it's great fun as well. So that's how I got into the agency business.
Awesome. So since a lot of our audience is business owners, and maybe just getting started or they're in their business, and talk to us about, the transition from that employee to actually own your own business and the challenges that you faced during that time.
So that's a great question. I mean, I think, firstly, the best strategy is probably not to overthink it, because you'd never do it if you overthink it. So I kind of decided it wouldn't be that hard to do. I could definitely do it. There was, basically got myself into a lot of debt buying the company. And this was April 2001. And I came in and I sat down and was like, we're now, running an agency, a technology agency is fantastic. May 2001, the dot-com crash hit and just everything fell apart. And I have to say that, one of the things, to be honest, is that since that time, pretty much nothing else has been worse. I mean, we had a situation where we were trying to replace the internal phone system. The new phone system didn't work. And at one point, I kind of just said, well, let's not worry about the new phone system. The only people calling us are going to call us to cut their budgets, because technology companies were freaking out at that time. Let's just chill, and maybe we get an extra week before they get hold of us. But seriously, it's a big change. So for me, the biggest change is the fact there's very few other people to go to. And I think finding people outside the business who you can, at least talk to, whether they be friends or family or, advisors, actually is remarkably important. And I'd certainly say, from my point of view, that's the biggest challenge and the most important thing to address.
Awesome. And, in that we were talking a little bit about content, and how does that play into marketing, taking a technology company and marketing it to another business? Because we're pretty familiar with consumer facing apps that, either pick up through social media or, they just find that referral hype, and we just learn about them somehow, or, you look in the app store or anything like that. How does that play out with, business to business in the sense of marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. So, just to give you some background, we actually now, as an agency, we don't go and talk about, PR or marketing automation or email marketing as a tactic when we first go and talk to clients. And we only talk about two things. We talk about content generation and content distribution. And to me, marketing is really simple. If your product's good and people will benefit from using it, you create content that's going to be helpful to your audience, and then you get it into in front of them, and that very simply is what you need to do. The type of content might vary for someone who's never heard of you versus someone who's already a customer, so you've got the various sort of stages along the customer journey that need slightly different content. But the reality is, if you're sending the customer or potential customer information that's going to help and puts your products in a good light, that's how you're going to get sales today. And forcing products down customers' throats doesn't work. I mean, to me, perhaps the most interesting thing today is that generally most people have more solutions that would help them than they could possibly evaluate. So most companies are unaware of potential products that could be a major help. So telling them about it is it's not old school, interruption marketing. It's very much, a collaborative kind of process with the customer.
Awesome. So what are some of the best campaigns or that you're one of your favorite campaigns that you've helped a client create?
I mean, we've had some great campaigns, and I think the best campaigns typically are the ones that aren't anyone's idea, but people keep riffing on them and developing them. So we had a campaign with one client. They're a global distributor, part of a large company called Avnet. And they had a campaign where they basically asked people to suggest ideas to change the world using their products. So we built a website, we had a global campaign to promote it, and people came to the site and entered. I think we had, if I'm right, something like 180 different countries visit the website. So it was truly global, it was absolutely amazing. But on top of that, the quality of the entries was absolutely incredible. So they ranged from somebody who wanted to basically build a really, really low-cost heart monitor for a baby incubator. So we're developing a baby incubator you could 3D print for the third world. And they just wanted really simple monitoring just to monitor newborn babies. And amazing product and really good, and they were saying how they could use those all the way through to a guy in the mountains in South America who was looking to develop systems to monitor rainfall and optimize farming there. So crazy different ideas, and it really brought a level of creativity that we didn't expect. And so from that point of view, I think we were so pleased with the quality of the entries. I guess in a way that has somewhat very little to do with the campaign and a lot to do with the people who entered the competition, but it was awesome.
Awesome. So talk to me a little bit about like how your internal team works as far as your leadership style, some tips that you could, share with the audience of, I mean, you've been in business, owning this business since 2001. So you probably have a few things that you've gone through, and how to get the best out of, especially in the creative arena.
I mean, that's a great question. And I think, you run a business for 20 years and then you probably feel you know about a tenth of what you need to know. So, I certainly wouldn't claim myself to be an expert. To be honest, I was very influenced. I worked for a guy, I won't mention who he is, as a boss at one point. And people used to say, why is this guy so successful? He's not brilliant, but he's incredibly successful. And we were working from, we were trying to work out, what his secret was. And maybe it's a little bit of arrogance on our point of view, but we looked around and we went, we've got an amazing team here. People we're working with are fabulous. He's got one talent, and his one talent is to hire good people. And that's what he does, and he does it very, very well. And I think that is the first secret. Getting the right people in your company, the people you want to work with, is really important. And that doesn't mean getting clones of you. It means getting different people who've got, a variety of ideas. but getting really good quality people. And if you can do that, you're halfway there, because ultimately, as you grow a business, it's not you driving the business, it's everybody else. And if they're not good, the wheels are just going to fall off at some point.
Yeah, I find that, a lot of people focus on personal development and they put so much emphasis on themselves, and then transitioning over, there's a disconnect to actually leading a team and growing a team and running an organization and building an organization, because you've got to, at some point, say, I basically suck. Like, these are the things that I'm good at, and that's it. Like, and allow somebody to rise, and there's that definitely a contrast between that, because we're kind of indoctrinated into being this, like, that superhero, mentality where we have to do it all,
Yeah, and I mean, I still find that really hard. I mean, everyone beats me up, and it's great because I've got a team that will come into me and beat me up for not delegating stuff. So that really helps. But it's a difficult transition. And the more you can delegate, the faster you can grow. And I think that's the truth. And that's certainly, my lack of skill there has definitely held Napier back from time to time. So, looking to find, people you really believe in is so important, because if you believe in the people, it makes it 100 times easier to trust them to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you're getting started, you have to do everything. And I think that's the hard transition, is like, really, if someone's starting off by themselves and transitioning into one or two team members, that letting go piece, because they think they can do it the best at that moment, because that's all they've known. So, it is a challenge. So, kind of swinging back to, one thing I think we want to talk about is the difference between, like, business in Europe versus, and now obviously in the UK, because there's going to be some distinctions there, and then business in the US.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting. I mean, there are definitely cultural differences, and trying to be too American in Europe doesn't come off very well. So I think, what American companies in particular need to do when entering Europe is they need to do their research and then work out how they can feel like they're at least meeting the Europeans halfway in terms of culture. So one of the big challenges in Europe is language. And, if you want to sell products, at some point, you've got to be able to support in local language. So you might be able to get, a few of the keenest, most enthusiastic customers in Germany, even though you're an English language service. If you really want to grow, it's going to be very hard. And certainly products, etc., they really need, some kind of local presence. We've got, clients that are global, they're selling all around the world. And, we'll have Germans who'll say, yeah, but they don't have a German office, so I'm not sure that, I really think they're able to support me. And you go, they support in all these different countries, but it's that feeling of being close. So I think it's trying to understand your market and what they want. Obviously, in Europe, we tend to be more conservative, maybe less outgoing, particularly in our marketing, than Americans. But equally, within Europe, there are differences as well. I mean, the British, for example, are fairly close to America, and we like, benefits and those kind of high level messages. If you talk to an engineer in Germany, if you're not throwing out a figure every other word and it's detailed technical information, they don't view you as being credible. It's not the way they communicate. So it's understanding how these guys communicate every day and then really mirroring it that's important.
Awesome. What are some other, like, cultural differences that you can think of? Is it in the way that people communicate, like, how someone would, introduce themselves to actually proposing, making a proposal, to all those different things? Like, what are some other, like, things that you see that is uniquely American and does not work in Europe?
Great question. So, again, it depends a little bit on where you're marketing, but one of the first things to say is, I think in America, there's generally a belief that what's new has got to be good, whereas in Europe, there's more of a belief that what works is good. So I get this really conservative view, and if you talk to Germans about how they approach things, they talk about their workflow. And if you're going to sell them a new product, it doesn't matter how good it is, they want to know how it affects their workflow. And that's a big deal. In B2B, that's a big deal. They need to make sure that all the systems are running, and they basically are much more resistant to change. But I think also it can be very human as well. So if you look at the way Americans tend to work, it tends to be very contractual. So, once you get into a deal, it's sign the contract, make the deal, you agree to this, we agree to that, right, it's all written down in black and white. And to some extent, you can do that in the UK. If you go to Italy, they want to understand the person. They want to relate to the person, and that's their priority. And they do business with people they trust. And frankly, the Italians don't trust contracts as a way to guarantee what they want. They trust people. So I think, culturally, there's these great differences, and it makes it such fun across Europe.
Yeah, and I had a friend of mine that was doing business in China in like 04, 05, 06. And so we got to see a little bit of that, get to go over there and see the differences and stuff. So, I know that our culture in business here is kind of straight to the point, very little, pleasantries and that it's, we're focused on what can we get done and all that stuff. And, you go to China, you go to Italy, it's more about the person and the relationship you can build.
Absolutely. I remember about 20 years ago, I was doing technical sales into Italy, and it was awesome because every time I went to see one of the customers, I knew the first question would be, when did you arrive? And typically I arrived the day before, so plane delays didn't make me late. The next question therefore was, where did your sales guy take you for dinner? And they wanted to know whether I was being looked after, whether I had, and it was like, did you enjoy it? Was the dinner good? They wanted to feel that I was, almost part of that Italian kind of scene. And it's great. I love it. I think it's fantastic. And you end up, really building very close working relationships with customers in that environment. And I think it's great. But, that's not to say you don't do that in America, but I think, business tends to be more formalized in America.
Yeah, that's the secret weapon, though, is like, teaching people how to actually sell online, work online. And a lot of it's straight transactional. You get a lot of people just cold emailing you. You're probably on LinkedIn getting that same thing. And it's a shock to the system once, we learn how to play that person first, the person role first, and then we can talk about business. It's highly more effective, and completely contrasts to what's actually happening out there. So it could be your secret weapon.
Definitely. And, I think that it's easy to get things wrong. I mean, I talked about Europe generally being conservative. But if you look at things like online grocery shopping, the biggest market for online grocery shopping in the world is China, not surprisingly. The second biggest market is the UK. And we're a small fraction of the size of the States, and yet we do a lot more online grocery shopping because, we've adopted it very quickly. And actually that's mainly because a lot of the retailers in the UK adopted it and offered services and made it normalized. Whereas I think in the States, initially it was very much driven by startups trying to just do delivery. But if I want to buy shopping from my local supermarket, I can obviously go there and buy the shopping. I can order online and they'll have it ready and I just drive through and pick it up. Drive through shopping, that's awesome. Or they'll come and deliver it. And indeed, some of them will not only come and deliver it, they'll actually come and put it away for me. I mean, it's nice. Amazing services. And that's all from, one company that originally was just running those supermarkets. So I think, it's interesting that sometimes you say, we're very conservative, and then almost everything I'm going to say as a generalization, there's a counterexample too.
Well, yeah, it's so funny because I think a lot of Americans they're like, oh, it's a waste of money, which is a crazy kind of thing. I know I have that resistance, but we've been doing almost 2 years now with Instacart,
Yep.
And it saves us. It tells us like we've saved 96 hours or something crazy in the last year or whatever. It tells you how much time, and we just can't go back. Like I don't even know what to do in the grocery store anymore. So yeah. So about Europe and that, and I know that one of the biggest changes happened in the last week or couple weeks or so is Brexit. How's that going to shift things? I'm interested in how's it's going to change it for you. I know it's a very controversial statement. I mean, I can understand parts. I know a little bit about the aspects of the business side of how they were trying to make things fair and balanced. You want to get representation. They were you kind of getting some areas of your economy were getting kind of pushed away because of trying to make this massive state centralized system. So talk to me about how that's shifted your side of the business.
Well, I mean, here's the amazing thing, and I think a lot of people don't really realize this. So we've spent 3 years basically from the time we voted to leave until now arguing about a transition period. So we're now in this transition period because we officially left at the end of January. And the UK government said the transition period will last till the end of the year. So having spent 3 years fighting over 11 months worth of transition, we're now supposedly going to organise all the deals and all the agreements for forever in 11 months. So the answer is nobody knows. At the moment, crudely speaking, we're following exactly the same rules as we were before. And so the transition period is basically nothing much changes, everything pretty much stays the same, and it's a period to negotiate the long-term deals. So that there are a whole range of different outcomes that could happen, and we're all waiting to see what they are. So it's one of those kind of strange things where we're actually asked to vote for, do you want this thing staying in the European Union, or do you want something else?
Yeah.
We never were told what that something else was. And so I guess we'll find out by December.
Yeah. I mean, I can see, we've seen over here the more and more focus on the federal government and less on the states and the drawbacks to that and all that stuff. And you see, moves by certain states trying to get rid of electoral college and stuff. But where do you see it really affecting you or affecting some challenges that you're going to face?
So I mean, there's two ways to look at this. I mean, one is actually it could have minimal effect. Business could carry on very much as it is. There could be no issue of tariffs or payments between the UK and the EU, and we'd just carry on as we do, and we'd almost not notice it. Equally, there could be other issues where it even gets difficult to bill companies in the EU and not have tariffs and taxes applied. So I read recently, I think 2/3 of UK small business are considering or looking into setting up an office somewhere in the EU if things don't work out well. So people are seriously looking at moving at least some of their resources to the EU, and that's certainly something we've done. We've looked very carefully at where we'd set up an office. We have a couple of options, and if we need to, we'll absolutely do it. And that's really sad because I'm British. I'm based in the UK. I'd like to grow a business in the UK, but it may be that this situation means that I have to go spend some money investing elsewhere.
Yeah, totally understand. So, since you're into technology, like I listened to the show a couple months ago about this futurist talking about 5G, all the technologies are coming. Since you're in that space, like, what are you most excited about that's coming down the pipe? I know UK is working on a 5G deal to get that rolled out, and there's a lot of excitement around that, but also all from the biotechnology to just general electronics to all this this futurist person, and sometimes they probably overstate their case, and the timeline is probably longer than what they state. But what are you excited about that you see coming down the pipe in technology?
Well, interestingly, I'm not that excited about 5G. To me, I get a lot of the technical benefits behind it. I get why they're doing things, but equally, I feel it's somewhat an evolution. They're looking for faster bandwidth, lower latency, all these good things that are going to make it a better communications network. But fundamentally, it's a better communications network than 4G or LTE, but it still has some of the other limitations. You're not going to get high speed, high bandwidth 5G across the country. It's only in metropolitan areas. There's going to be, different frequencies, which has very, very different impacts. So 5G for me is not really the big thing. I think the interesting thing for me is how much of an impact AI will have. Because if we look at where AI is going today, it's incredibly successful, incredibly effective in certain very specific areas. So if you want to recognize patterns in an image, for example, for self-driving cars, it's awesome. It's really good. It works really well. But if you want to write a story, even a children's story, AI just sucks. It's terrible. And it's going to be interesting for me to see whether there is anything that I guess you'd call more human or more creative that is beyond AI, or whether it's just going to crunch through everything and we're going to be sat in our chairs with our AI servants doing everything for us. I don't know. I think that is fascinating to see how far engineers can push and develop the technology.
Well, yeah, I look at it like in the sense of, I think, innately, if you're an engineer, if whatever that you're able to do, I think the essence of humans is creation, right? And, be it in a more logical standpoint in an engineering facet, or in, a creative marketing aspect or art or anything like that. Will they ever be able to evolve to have that? Because I think inside of that, I don't know if you can ever replicate that. Because I think that's the thing that separated us from any other creature on the earth, is our ability to create,
And I kind of agree with you. I think that, when you look at AI, its impact is on specific tasks, things to, pattern recognition. It's amazing at. And it will recognize people's voices, and it can interpret that. And that's incredible. If you've got Alexa or Google Assistant or anything else, the quality of voice recognition is amazing. But how far can AI go in creativity? And I don't know. It has to be said, at one point people thought that if cars went more than 12 miles an hour, people's bodies would explode. So, maybe AI can be creative. I don't know. To me, the fascinating thing is watching it play out. You just don't know today. And that's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I relate a lot to, when a business is growing its team, like your capacity to do something as a leader is very finite. And as you add team members, like your innate ability gets to be freed up more, and all the stuff that does not allow you to do what you're truly, good at. Like your past boss is like, hey, he's a great hire, person that hires, finds great talent, right, and builds that team. I think that, especially with AI, it's going to allow that to come out. And, I know a lot of people are scared about the disruption, but there's also, I think, you probably remember the .com and the internet and like what the conversations around that. I remember, 2000, right? Y2K was going to be this crazy thing, and it was fine, right? And like all these other companies, there was probably this similar doom and gloom at some point. And I don't know if it's more now than it is then, but, I think there's an opportunity for it to, become even better,
Absolutely. I mean, when the printing presses started having an impact and ordinary people could afford books, there was real concern that the world would fall apart because people would read books rather than go out into the world, and it'll be a disaster. Books could ruin the world, and now we've got parents who are like, put that phone down, read a book instead. And so I think the new thing is always going to be somewhat the villain. People are always going to be worried about potential downsides, and without doubt there are potential downsides, but I think there's a lot of upside. I mean, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and the other thing is I think people don't realize how your statement about read a book versus put your phone down, I forget what generation. I mean, it's 1 or 2 generations ago, whatever. There's at that point they were born with screens in their hands, so their ability from a very young age to process information. Like my son, he was figuring out iPad real super young, and it's impressive. And you don't look at the fact that you don't understand how much it's going to help us evolve or what it's doing as far as our evolutionary scale to be able to process information. So, maybe AI is going to go like this, but you don't realize what we're naturally going to be able to do, from our standpoint.
No, absolutely. And I think if you look at how kids are evolving, I mean, things are different. And there are kids that are not as active, but one of my sons is mad keen on cricket. He's basically playing cricket every day of the week. Probably not something you do so much in the States, but he also loves his phone. Just because you spend a lot of time on a screen doesn't mean you don't get out and do things. And I think balance is important. It's not one thing's good and one thing's bad.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I appreciate having you on. Anything you want to leave the audience with? Any words of wisdom, and then how to get a hold of you?
So I think the easy thing to say is, if the audience have any words of wisdom for me, then definitely get hold of me. They can get hold of me through the website, which is napierb2b.com. That's NAPIER, B the number 2, then B.com. Or they can connect with me on LinkedIn. If they want to connect, my name's Mike Maynard. I'm pretty sure if you search Mike Maynard Napier, there won't be anyone else come up. And it'd be great to hear from people. I mean, and obviously, if any of the listeners do, start to expand out in Europe, I'd love to hear how it goes.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate having you on, and it was great getting to know you over this conversation. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much, Anthony. Thank you.
All right. Well, cool. Awesome. Well, thanks.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That was fun. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to have it just conversational. We go off and, fun stuff. So
was that okay? Was that what you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just literally just jump on and just kind of mix in a little bit about you and, kind of your experience, so people can touch base and what you're interested in and kind of a whole lot.
Yeah, I've listened to a few of the podcasts that you've done, so they were great, and so I was kind of ready for what you're doing. But yeah, that's good. Yeah. Do you know when this will go out roughly?
I could probably get it out in the next week or so.
Oh, awesome! That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Anthony. I really appreciate it.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Right, bye-bye.
This concludes another episode of the Be Battle Ready podcast. If you're looking to put it all together across all the areas of your life and be battle ready, come get connected with powerful leaders in our Be Battle Ready Facebook group, where we will be dropping new battles to win each day.